Hey guys, welcome to this video. My name is John Watts. I'm a consumer protection lawyer. And a follow up on the last video we did on the FDCPA, and that is who is a third party. I want to talk in this video about why do debt collectors call third parties. And there's a legitimate reason and a very illegitimate reason. And then when the third parties are contacted illegally, why are these cases so valuable? So there are two reasons that debt collectors will contact a third party. One is legitimate or can be legitimate, and that is to obtain location information. Location information simply means where do you work, where do you live, what's your home phone number. Okay? And if a debt collector does not have that, or they're confused, they go, well, we're not sure we have the right address, or we're not sure we have the right phone number. Well, then they can contact third parties if they're incredibly careful. They have to be very, very, very precise in what they do in order to not violate the FDCPA. And so if they do that correctly, then that's a legitimate purpose. But if they do it wrong, and I'll just give you an example, kind of the classic example is they call your neighbors, they just look you up on Google Maps, kind of look at all your neighbors, and they call your neighbors and say, hey, I'm trying to reach John Watts. And they go, well, this is not John Watts. Well, does he live across the street from you or in your neighborhood? And they're like, well, yeah, he does. Well, would you give him a message? Tom, it's really, really vital that he call me back. Well, that's what's known as a block party. Okay. The idea is all my neighbors will come to me, or they'll text me or email me or Facebook Messenger me and say, hey, we got this guy calling and you need to call him back. And he said he's worried about you. And I'm like, oh my goodness, they're calling my neighbors, okay? So that would be an illegitimate purpose for, trying to pretend like it's location information, but it's really not. Now the other is just where they flat out call third parties. They call your mother-in-law, they call your child, they call your brother, they call your neighbor, and just talk about, hey, this guy needs to call us back. He owes money, or he's broken his promises to us, or we're investigating to see if he has assets. So when we seize the assets, we know exactly what to seize. And it's just sort of very blatant, okay? And we used to see this a lot, and then it kind of calmed down for a few years, and now we're starting to see it again. And so why do they do this? Well, they do it because it works. I mean, when it's one thing if a debt collector is blowing up my phone and I go, I'm just going to block the number. Or they send me letters, and I get them and throw them away. And maybe they're on my credit report, but maybe I don't care about my credit report. I'm like, hey, I just bought a house. I don't have a security clearance. I'm good. They can be on there. I don't care. But when they start calling your mother-in-law, your children, your parents, your siblings, your neighbors, your preacher, your boss, okay, that gets your attention. We're like, okay, this thing is really, really escalated. And look, this is sort of a silly example, but in spy movies, they'll capture the spy, right? And they have him, like handcuffed and tied to a chair, and they go, give us the secret code. And he's like, I'll never give you the code. And, they're like, we'll torture you. I'll never give you the code. And then they go, all right, they kind of nod, and somebody brings out the spouse, or they bring out the child, or they bring out the parent, or the family dog, or whatever, and they go, we're going to hurt them unless you tell. They're like, okay, it's, ABC 123 is the code. Like, really? That's the code? Yeah, that's the code. So the point is, when they start threatening us through somebody else, that gets our attention. Okay, it's one thing if you want to harass me, or even harass my spouse. Remember the last video we talked about who is a third party? Well, you're not, your spouse is not, and your lawyer's not, okay? But if they want to sort of harass my family, meaning my spouse and me, that's one thing. But they start contacting my sister, my father, my coworkers, my boss, that's just a whole nother level. And it's incredibly illegal, it's incredibly effective, and that's why they do it. And that's why, because it's so damaging and it's so upsetting, that is why these cases can result in very, very large verdicts. Because jurors hear about this, and look, what we do is we'll say an opening statement. and this is something called rules of the road. It's just a trial technique or strategy. And we'll say, I'll get up an opening statement and say, I'll point either to the witness stand or I'll point to the corporate representative of the debt collector, and I'll say, that person right there, they've been at this company 20 years. They will get up on that stand over there and they will tell you that no honorable debt collector would ever contact a third party, meaning not the consumer, the spouse, or the lawyer, because that is a terrible violation of the law. Okay? And then we go through some exceptions, and it's worded slightly different than that, but just trying to give you the flavor of it. And they have to get up and admit that, or they look like idiots, because that is the law. Okay? And so, frankly, we don't care. Do they admit it, that this is a terrible thing to do, or do they lie? I mean, really, if I had my preference, I'd rather them lie, because when we find the company's lying, that just jacks the verdict up even more. Okay? And so, very, very bad stuff that they're doing when they're contacting third parties. And so if you sue them for that, you may very well have a very nice case and some real significant damages that you can talk to a jury about, and that the jury will say, hey, we got to fully compensate this person under the FDCPA. And if you have a state law claim, and usually we do, typically something like an invasion of privacy claim, then we can get punitive damages for that claim. So just want to sort of give you this in this two-part video series, who is a debt collector? I mean, who is a third party that a debt collector would contact? And then why did they do it? And why are these cases so valuable? It's because it's so damaging to the consumer. When they start contacting, again, maybe it's your ex-mother-in-law or your ex-boss, and it's like the last thing you want to do is get an email from your old boss or your ex-mother-in-law, or even a child or a parent that says, hey, I see you're having some financial problems and so-and-so's calling for you, and do we need to help you with this? It's incredibly embarrassing and absolutely illegal. So hope that that's helpful to you, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Okay, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.